How I got stuck in Thailand and had the time of my life. I've always been the kind of person who's obsessed with work. It's not just that I love what I do, it's that I've always believed success requires constant focus, constant effort, and constant sacrifice. I'm a successful woman in my early 30s, and I've worked hard to get where I am. But here's the thing, that hard work came at the cost of almost everything else in my life. Relationships? Not much time for those. Personal life? What's that? For years, I've put everything I have into my career. I've risen through the ranks, built my professional reputation, and achieved goals most people only dream about. But along the way, I've also burned myself out. And I realized, only too late, that I've been so focused on my career that I've completely neglected my personal happiness. My sister has been telling me for years that I need to take a break. She's always been the one to point out how stressed I am, how little I relax, how I'm always running on empty. I always shrugged it off. After all, there's no time to relax when there's work to do, right? But recently, I hit a breaking point. I'd been working non-stop for months, feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, and honestly, pretty miserable. So, my sister called me up one day and insisted that I take a vacation. She even went as far as to book a flight to Thailand and forced me to go. She said, "You need this, trust me. You'll thank me later." At first, I thought it was a horrible idea. I mean, who has time to go on vacation when there's work piling up? But she wouldn't let me back out. She kept pushing me until I gave in, and reluctantly, I agreed. I landed in Thailand feeling guilty and annoyed. The flight had been long, and I was still thinking about everything I had left behind at the office. The idea of spending a week in a beautiful, tropical paradise seemed like the last thing I needed. But I was here, and I had no choice but to make the best of it, right? The first couple of days were pretty much what I expected. I stayed in my hotel room, kept my phone close, and checked emails constantly. I told myself I'd just spend a few hours relaxing and then get back to work. But after a while, something started to change. The hustle and bustle of Bangkok was overwhelming, but in a way that started to feel invigorating. The heat of the city, the smells of street food, and the chaotic rhythm of life here made me feel like I was part of something much bigger than my office or my emails. I wandered through the streets, marveling at the vibrant markets and the stunning temples. I found myself slowing down, even if just a little, and the world outside my work bubble felt less like a distraction and more like an opportunity. By the third day, I started to enjoy myself. I was still checking my phone too much, but I was getting drawn into the beauty of my surroundings, too. One afternoon, my sister dragged me to the beach. I'd barely touched the sand before she pulled me into the water. "You're not here to work," she said. "You're here to live." The more I tried to fight it, the more I realized she was right. There was no deadline here. No meeting I had to prepare for. No client I had to impress. The waves were crashing, the sun was setting, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about what I had to do next. I was just present. I was still a bit skeptical. After all, I couldn't just turn off my workaholic tendencies overnight, but I decided that, since I was already here for the week, I might as well let myself try to enjoy it. I took a deep breath, looked at the water stretching out before me, and finally allowed myself to relax. For the first few days, I kept up my usual routine, even in paradise. I woke up early, took a walk along the beach, then checked my emails before heading out for a day of sightseeing. Even though I was on vacation, I still couldn't shake off the need to be productive. It felt wrong to just be, especially after being used to a life where every minute was accounted for. But as the days passed, I started to feel the weight of that constant striving lifting off me, just a little at first. There was something about the slow pace of Thailand, something in the air that encouraged relaxation. The rhythm of the waves, the steady hum of scooters, the soft voices of locals, it all seemed to pull me in, gently, like the ocean tugging at your feet as you wade deeper into the water. I had to admit, I was starting to feel a little more at ease. Maybe my sister had been right after all. It was on the fourth day that I really started to let go. I was sitting at a beachside cafe, sipping an iced coconut drink, watching the surfers catch waves, when I noticed him. He was standing by the bar, talking to a couple of other tourists, but his eyes kept flickering in my direction. He had a natural confidence about him, tall, with tousled blonde hair, wearing a simple white t-shirt and cargo shorts that looked effortlessly cool in a way I could never quite pull off. He caught my gaze and smiled, that easy smile that instantly made me feel like I was the only one in the room. I smiled back, more out of habit than anything, not expecting him to come over. But he did. "Mind if I join you?" he asked in an accent that told me he wasn't from around here. There was something in the way he spoke that immediately made me feel drawn to him, the way his voice was warm but direct. "Of course," I said, almost automatically, but I quickly found myself regretting how stiff and formal I sounded. Was I really that uptight? He didn't seem to mind, though, sitting across from me with an easy posture, as if he were perfectly at home in the moment. We talked for a while, about our travels, our lives back home, and what had brought us to Thailand. His name was Alex, and he was from Germany, visiting for a month to unwind before returning to his high-pressure job back in Berlin. His stories about his life, his adventures, and his ability to just enjoy the present moment started to break down the walls I'd built around myself. I'd spent so much time focusing on my career that I had almost forgotten what it felt like to have a carefree conversation with a stranger. As the conversation continued, I felt something shift inside me. I could feel my body relaxing, my shoulders lowering from the tightness they'd held for so long. We had a natural chemistry, a lightness between us that made everything feel easier. There was no agenda, no pressure, just two people enjoying the simplicity of the moment. And then, before I even realized it, the conversation turned to something more personal, something more playful. "I don't think I've seen anyone here enjoy themselves as much as you seem to," Alex said with a raised eyebrow. "What's your secret? How are you so good at being so serious all the time?" He chuckled, but there was a mischievous glint in his eyes. I rolled my eyes but couldn't help but laugh. "I guess I'm just good at being boring," I replied, but as soon as the words left my mouth, I realized how true they were. "I'm just focused. Too focused, maybe." "Focused," he repeated, leaning forward. "Maybe you need to let loose a little." I was taken aback by his boldness, but something inside me stirred at the thought. Could I? Could I actually let go of control for once? The idea seemed so foreign to me, but in that moment, with the warm sun on my skin, the sound of the ocean in the distance, and the easy connection between us, I felt open to it. Before I could think too much about it, Alex leaned closer. "Come on," he said softly, "you deserve to let go, just for a little while. Life's too short to take it so seriously." And so, for the first time in what felt like forever, I decided to do just that. We spent the rest of the day together, walking along the beach, sharing a sunset cocktail, and laughing until my sides ached. There was no agenda, no pressure, just pure enjoyment. It was refreshing, exhilarating. And as the day turned into night, and we found ourselves on the beach, the intimacy between us grew. Our conversations became quieter, more intimate, the chemistry undeniable. Alex leaned in, brushing a stray piece of hair from my face, his fingers lingering on my skin. "You know," he said, his voice lower now, "I think you're finally starting to enjoy yourself." "I think you're right," I said, and before I could say anything else, he kissed me. It was slow at first, tentative, but then it deepened as the world seemed to disappear around us. I kissed him back with a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in years. No worries, no self-imposed rules, just the heat of the moment and the connection between us. In that kiss, I let go of all the expectations I had placed on myself. For once, I wasn't a career-driven machine. I was just me. We spent the night together, more than just the kiss. We shared moments of connection I hadn't realized I'd been craving. It wasn't just physical, it was an emotional release, a letting go of everything I had been holding onto so tightly. I found myself doing things I never thought I'd do, letting go of all the restraints I had placed on myself. I felt alive in a way I hadn't experienced in a long time, perhaps ever. Alex and I continued to spend time together over the next few days. Each moment with him felt like an extension of the last, natural, effortless, and full of the freedom I had been craving. We explored the island together, trying new foods, watching the stars at night, and enjoying each other's company without the weight of the outside world bearing down on us. For the first time in years, I wasn't consumed by my career. I wasn't thinking about what was waiting for me back home. I was just living. It was a new adventure, a new side of me I had been too afraid to explore before. And with Alex, I felt as though I could do anything, experience anything, without fear of judgment or failure. In his company, I wasn't the driven, rigid woman who was always putting work first. I was simply someone embracing the moment, someone who could, for the first time in a long while, truly enjoy life. I wasn't ready for Alex to leave. The days we spent together felt like they had flown by in a whirlwind of adventure, passion, and laughter. His departure came faster than I expected, and I thought I would be left with a sense of loss, a void where our connection once was. But as I stood there on the pier, watching his ferry pull away from the dock, I was surprised at how little it hurt. There was no deep sadness, no longing. Instead, there was a sense of fulfillment, like I had been given exactly what I needed at the right time. He had shown me how to live in the moment, how to embrace freedom, and for that, I would always be grateful. But just as I thought life would return to its predictable, calm state, I was hit with an unexpected blow. The next morning, I woke up to an email from the front desk at my hotel. Apparently, there was an issue with my visa, something about a discrepancy between my travel dates and my actual length of stay. I had miscalculated my departure date, and now, I was stuck. At first, I panicked. My flight was already booked, my bags packed, and I was ready to leave. But now, I had to deal with the uncertainty of not knowing when I'd be able to return. The hotel staff assured me that the issue would be resolved, but it would take at least a few extra days. I called the airline and tried to change my flight, but everything was fully booked for the next week. It was frustrating and embarrassing, and I couldn't help but feel like I was being punished for something I had no control over. I spent the first day fuming. How could this happen? Why couldn't everything just go as planned? I couldn't shake the nagging thought that my work back home was piling up, waiting for me to return. But after a day of brooding and frustration, I started to realize something: I was in paradise. A few more days in a tropical haven, a few more days of freedom, wasn't the worst thing in the world. So, I decided to stop fighting it. Instead of spiraling into stress and worry, I chose to embrace the extra time. I could leave, sure, but what if there was something I was meant to learn in those extra days? Something I couldn't see from my office back home, constantly caught in the rat race? I threw myself into the experience, immersing myself in the culture and the people around me. The frustration faded into the background as I began to see the beauty of the world outside of work. I took long walks through the markets, chatted with the locals, and ate food that I couldn't pronounce but loved all the same. Each moment felt like a gift, like a chance to explore the things I had neglected for so long. I met other travelers, too, some who had come for the same reasons I had, and others who were here for very different ones. I found myself connecting with people in a way I hadn't anticipated. There was a woman from Canada, Sarah, who was traveling alone just like I had been at the beginning of this trip. We spent a day together hiking through the jungle, discovering hidden waterfalls, and talking about everything and nothing at once. There was something so freeing about being with people who didn't have expectations of me. As I wandered through the island's vibrant streets, I started to realize how much I had been holding back. Life was meant to be experienced, not just lived out in a small, confined space defined by work and responsibility. The more I learned about the local culture, the more I began to understand how much I had neglected the idea of balance in my own life. The people here lived simply but fully, enjoying what the day brought rather than planning everything out to the last detail. One evening, after a beautiful sunset, I found myself sitting at a small bar by the beach. The soft orange glow of the sky was fading, and the sound of the waves created a peaceful rhythm in the background. I wasn't thinking about work or responsibilities. I wasn't thinking about the plane I would eventually catch or the people waiting for me back home. I was just existing in the moment. It was then that I met someone else. He wasn't like Alex, he wasn't tall or strikingly handsome. But there was something about him that drew me in, something that felt comfortable, easy. His name was Marco, and he was a local. He owned a small dive shop on the outskirts of town and had a laid-back, almost meditative quality about him. We started talking about the island, the ocean, and life. And for the first time since arriving, I didn't feel like I was pretending to be someone I wasn't. With Marco, there were no expectations, no pretenses. He invited me to go diving with him the next day, and for the first time, I felt no hesitation in saying yes. The dive was incredible. We swam through coral reefs teeming with colorful fish, surrounded by the peace of the ocean. It felt like another world. And as I surfaced, breathing deeply, I realized something. I had been so wrapped up in my life back home, so focused on the expectations and pressures of the career I had built, that I had forgotten what it felt like to just live. To just exist without a plan, without a need to control every moment. Over the next few days, I grew more and more comfortable with the idea of not knowing what was next. My time with Marco was simple, full of laughter and easy conversations, and I found myself embracing the unpredictability of life. It wasn't about looking for love or finding the perfect experience, it was about enjoying where I was, who I was with, and who I was becoming. The extra time I had in Thailand had turned into an unexpected opportunity for growth, self-reflection, and discovery. My life back home seemed so distant now. And while I was excited to return and face my responsibilities, I couldn't help but wonder if I would ever be the same again. What if this experience could change the way I lived my life moving forward? What if I could bring a little bit of this freedom, this peace, back with me? In the meantime, I chose to savor every moment, allowing myself to be completely immersed in this unexpected adventure. The day I had been dreading finally arrived. After more than a week in paradise, I was sitting in the terminal, looking out over the warm, golden sands that had become my temporary haven. The island, with its vibrant colors and peaceful rhythm, felt like another world compared to the concrete jungle I was about to return to. I could feel the tension in my chest start to tighten again as I thought about the emails that would undoubtedly await me, the tasks that had been piling up in my absence. But despite the anxiety of returning to my old life, there was something else I felt as well, something I hadn't expected. A quiet sense of peace. I had made it through this unexpected detour in my life, and in doing so, I had discovered parts of myself that had been buried under years of work and stress. Thailand had given me something I hadn't known I was missing, freedom. And it wasn't just the freedom to travel or explore, but the freedom to live, to breathe without the weight of expectations crushing me. I sat there, staring out the window at the planes taking off and landing, my mind racing with thoughts of what awaited me back home. I missed the simplicity of the island, the long walks along the beach, the leisurely afternoons spent getting lost in conversation with people I barely knew. But more than that, I missed the feeling of being present. For the first time in ages, I had lived without worrying about the future, without obsessing over what was next. The time spent with Marco, the dive into the ocean, and even my unexpected extra days here had all played a part in breaking down the walls I had built around myself. When I returned to my hotel each night, I wasn't checking my emails or preparing for the next big project. I was simply existing. And for someone like me, that was a monumental shift. But as much as I had grown during this trip, as much as I had learned to loosen the reins, I also knew I couldn't live like this forever. My life back home was waiting for me, and so were my responsibilities. The truth was, I didn't want to abandon everything I had worked for. I had worked hard to get where I was, and I still wanted to succeed. But I also wanted to live. To enjoy life in a way that wasn't tied to deadlines or meetings or performance reviews. As I sat in the airport, I thought about the balance I needed to strike. I didn't want to return to the old version of myself, the one who was so consumed by work that she forgot what it meant to truly live. But I also didn't want to throw everything I had worked for away. There had to be a middle ground, a way to hold on to both my career and the new life I had started to build here, one that included spontaneity, adventure, and a deeper connection to myself and others. The plane ride home was quiet. I stared out the window, watching the clouds pass by beneath us. The familiar sense of urgency, the tightness in my chest, was starting to creep back in. I missed the freedom I had found in Thailand. But as the hours passed, I began to think about how I could carry a piece of that with me. Maybe it wouldn't be easy. Maybe it wouldn't be perfect. But I could try. I could try to find moments to breathe, moments to slow down, and moments to reconnect with the things I had been too focused on my career to appreciate before. When I arrived back home, everything felt the same. The city was bustling, the air colder, the streets faster. But I wasn't the same. I carried with me the peace and perspective I had gained, and I knew I had to apply it to my life. I needed to find that balance between success and happiness, between work and living fully. There were a few things that had changed in me. I wasn't going to let my emails control me anymore. I was going to make time for things that mattered, whether that was traveling, exploring new passions, or simply spending more time with the people I loved. I had been so driven by my career, but now, I realized there was so much more to life than that. As I stepped into my apartment, I put my suitcase down and took a deep breath. The familiar weight of the world was still there, but I didn't feel so crushed by it anymore. I knew I had work to do, but I also knew I had to live for myself. For the first time in years, I felt like I was in control of my life, rather than my career controlling me. I'd learned so much during my time in Thailand, and I wasn't going to forget it. Those lessons, the people I met, the moments of freedom, they were all a part of me now. And even though I was back to my routine, I knew I had the power to create a new, balanced version of myself. One who could achieve success without sacrificing joy. I wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to find out.